You're listening to The Big Lift, the podcast of Web Trends Optimize, the CRO solution that enables marketers and developers to maximize the ROI on their digital properties. Web Trends Optimize is a powerful, feature-rich and easy-to-use solution, all delivered within a fixed-price contract with no additional cost for increased functionality ever. During these podcasts, we meet some of the key influencers within the marketing and conversion world to understand their roles and examine their challenges. I have with me today Joe Doveton, CEO of Binary Bear, an agency specialising in helping companies get the most from their websites. In a two-section podcast, we firstly talk about experimentation and whether there is any difference between testing and CRO, and if this area of expertise has become commoditised or is still in the hands of specialists. Secondly, we talk to Joe about the upcoming Experimentation Elite Day and the Experimentation Elite Awards, and understand why it's now high time for experimentation to be recognised. Joe, tell me a little about Binary Bear and your reasons for starting the business.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in experimentation and what's become known as experimentation. But when I started working, it was multivariate testing and then conversion rate optimization. I've been working in this space for about 12 years for various agencies and clients direct. And I just kind of ended up with a consultancy by accident, really. I inherited some training courses from bodies like the IDM, the CIM, and Brighton SEO. And it kind of went from there. And after training a few people, I started picking up some clients. And then I went one day a week doing my business, and I went full-time with it in 2018.
So it's kind of naturally expanded itself to fill the space, basically.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned a few different terms there. You've mentioned MVT, you've mentioned experimentation, and also CRO, conversion rate optimization. What do you believe are the differences between experimentation and CRO?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I think that this space has evolved over the years, and at the if you like the companies that were the early adopters have accelerated away, and the best businesses in this space, or the businesses that to my mind are doing optimization well, are the companies that have really embedded a culture of experimentation in their business. And you kind of see this through businesses that you read about, the kind of numbers of tests that brands like Google are doing, tens of thousands of tests a year. I also, consider brands like, if you think about people like, the Airbnbs, the Amazons, the Skyscanners, the Ubers. These are all household names that, over the last 10 years or so, they've really built their business on a really fast-paced process of experimentation. And that comes from the top. So at the if you like the laggard end, the slower end, where people are just starting to think about how they can improve their CRO, improve their experimentation. A lot of those brands are struggling to catch up because it needs to be led by somebody senior within the business. And it's as much as anything else, it's not something you do, it's a culture shift within the company. And it's scary for a lot of people. So, I think that experimentation is if you kind of like, the elite vanguard of the CRO optimization world. You don't have to be doing experimentation to be doing CRO, but the companies that are experimenting at scale are the ones that are growing the fastest.
One of the things that I think people have, I suppose, hung their hat on is CRO tends to be driven through ROI. And I know we're using a lot of, abbreviations here, but ROI seems to be the leverage that a lot of the younger marketers, and I mean younger with regard to their experience levels, tend to use to be able to get CRO adopted. Do you feel that's the case, or is it just another flavour of experimentation?
No, I think there is a bit of truth in that. I suppose the implication that comes out of that is that there's not value in tests that don't drive something in terms of a positive ROI, i.e. experiments that don't win, which of course is rubbish, because clearly you can learn as much, if not more, from experiments that are not successful.
But that's that. Excuse me for interrupting, but that's difficult to be able to tell your boss.
Absolutely. Well, again, this goes back to my first point about it needs to be led from the front. So I've got one of the quotes that I use when I'm training is from Elon Musk. He kind of he gets a bad rep for some of the stupid things that he does. But I think this is quite an interesting point that he made. He said, this is in regard to SpaceX. He said, there's this idea at NASA that failure is not an option. He said, at SpaceX, failure absolutely is an option. If you're not failing, you're not innovating enough. And I think it does need to. You do need that license to really be able to push the boundaries in terms of innovation and experimentation in order to move the dial towards big numbers. A lot of these, a lot of the tests that are run with it on the basis of, we're going to try and get ROI from this individual experiment or this very small group of experiments. They're not moving the dial that much. They're not that innovative. So in order to really make that leap, you do need to have, if you like, no fear, and be able to go into a series of experimentations without worrying too much about whether it's a short-term win or a short-term loss.
So how would you position that? So say, for instance, you were talking to a potential new client that you happen to knock on the door, and you're trying to explain to them the value of experimentation in a way that says, we have to spend money on this. So what's the return that we're going to get if it's not purely monetary? How do you explain that?
Well, in a lot of cases, I think this is really about making better decisions, and it's about what tools and approaches do you use to make better decisions. The example I always use is lots of people have got Google Analytics, there is a free version of Google Analytics. Lots of people have got Google Analytics 360. What's the ROI of Google 360? It's something that helps you make better decisions. So, this is, to my mind, exactly the same. It's about accessing customer data that allows you to reduce the reliance on, subjective ideas or subjective theory, and add a little bit more rigor to the decision-making process.
Taking a couple of steps back, in a bell curve of experimentation adoption between early adoption and commoditization, where do you believe that we are now?
Oh, well, I think we're still at the early stages, if you like, the foothills, because there are many brands, even high street brands that I speak to on a regular basis, that talk a good game, and that they say, my C level is fully committed to experimentation, but the processes and the technologies and the culture they've got just aren't ready for large scale experimentation. The way that this whole industry works is, of course, there are so many moving parts. So, for example, web development's a big part of it. I speak to people every week who've got web dev backlogs that they can't get through, that's holding them up in terms of experimentation programs. There are other problems about lack of resource, and a big one is lack of skills, because there's no kind of if you like, at the moment, a kind of like clear sort of university path to becoming an optimizer or an experimenter. People struggle massively to get the right people in their teams. So I think we're really only at the early stages of this stuff.
But you mentioned this about, the experimentation is still early adopter stage. I won't say it's truly an early adopter, because obviously lots of companies are doing some sort of experimentation. But do you think the fresh marketer out of their university degree are equipped or know enough about experimentation to be able to start implementing it, or even having the question inside their new employer, are we doing experimentation? And if not, why not?
Well, there's this thing, isn't there, that you hear a lot, and it's another sort of jargony term, about the T-shaped marketer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there are people have generally wider skill ranges than perhaps they used to, but at the same time, you've also got and I think this is driven by agencies, very much a siloing of skills. So, one of the things that, having worked at multiple agencies that offer, if you like, an almost full service solution, part of the problem is a client comes in and they tend to, offer them what the client asks for rather than solving the problem in front of them. So let's say it's something like, site speed. Does that fit in the CRO team? Does that fit in web development? Does that fit in SEO? There's no easy answer for that. It affects all three of those
Yeah.
departments. So who's going to deal with it? And I think quite often the agencies say, we're going to tell you 3 kilos of SEO and 2 kilos of PPC, and
I love that phrase, as if it's a drug.
yeah, exactly, like street value of 10 million or whatever. But that's what the way I feel a lot of agencies do work. Agencies are obviously a big recruiter for of talent coming into the industry, and then people do specialize, and in particular something like experimentation optimization, CRO, whatever you want to call it, that really it's a difficult skill set to fill, because you're looking at people who've they've got stat skills, they might have behavioral science skills, they might have design skills. Very few people are going to tickle those boxes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that SEO, search engine optimization, and Google Analytics are part of mainstream marketing courses now. The digital marketer has to have those skills. Yet, I think there are very few people that come out of their degree course or whatever it might be that understand the value or the benefit of CRO, experimentation, A/B testing, whatever you want to be able to call it. Do you think that's a fundamental issue that needs to be addressed?
Yeah, well, I'm a little bit out of the loop, I think, with a lot of the the training companies these days. But certainly within my most recent experience, maybe a couple of years ago, a lot of the industry bodies had trouble selling CRO courses. Whereas SEO courses, copywriting, AdWords were chock a block, and so I think maybe always also comes back to some of those organisations that are selling this course. They don't understand it either. They don't know where it fits, and it's been for, as I said, I've been doing it for 12 years. It's always been the kind of like unfashionable younger brother a little bit compared to some of the stuff that sort of gets pushed to the top. Which has always been a frustration for me, and no doubt other optimizers. But
let me just interrupt by saying, do you think then it's the kind of the geekish person inside the organisation that's responsible for experimentation? Because if you say SEO is definitely done around, I don't know, you could say it's PR in a different way,
yeah,
and you can use analytics, Google Analytics, as being a business analyst. CRO A/B testing seems to fall between the cracks, does it not?
yeah, I think there is a certain element of that. It's people perceive that there's a very large barrier to entry, and I think also a lot of people in the past have started programs, and when it's not straight away resulted in from experiment one, you've got a 50% uplift, or some of the outlandish things that you sometimes read about in case studies, people get disheartened. And again, it comes back to that cultural understanding about what this is. This is experimentation, and experiments are going to win, lose, and draw. You need to trust the science. It's not about shaking a magic money tree that money falls out. It's not a quick hack. It's not a quick way to make a buck. What it is it's the way to put non-subjective decision making at the heart of the business, and put data in front of decisions. You're never going to make 100% perfect decisions. You're never going to 100% eliminate risk. But what you can do is you can use the data from the experiments that you run to be better informed. And the companies that are doing this stuff seem to be growing at a faster rate than the companies that aren't.
Do you think that A/B testing, experimentation, CRO will ever be commoditized?
Well, it's difficult to being commoditized at the moment, but just because of the fact that there is this, like I said a minute ago, there is this skill shortage, and it's difficult to know. There isn't. There's if you like, there's two routes within the agencies. Do you have a team of people with individual specialisms, like, for example, you've got a stats specialist, you've got a behavioural science specialist, you've got a persuasion theory specialist, you've got a designer, or do you, look for somebody who's got a little bit of all of those skills? And the people who've got a little bit of all of those skills are harder to find. So it's hard to see that it's going to become commoditized immediately. Also, I think if you look at something like SEO, and most organizations work loosely in the same sort of way. There's the type of services that you get and the tools that are available. They're not wildly dissimilar from brand to brand. Whereas at the moment within experimentation, there's flexibility to use a range of tools in your programs, and a lot of it comes down to budget. I work with clients who have relatively lower amounts of budget, so you have to work out whether it's better to do customer interviews and remote user tests, or heat maps or scroll maps, and you have to sort of pick and choose. So I think we're a long way from this kind of issue that there's a boilerplate approach to CRO.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think whilst there are lots of software tools out there that enable CRO to be done more efficiently, it's still that knowledge base that you need associated with the right tools to be able to deliver. And it's that kind of hypotheses bit is one of the challenges that I think that people are struggling with, because if you don't know, you don't know. Trying to experiment on something if you don't know what the question is, never mind what the answer is very challenging.
Absolutely. And also, making sure that the hypothesis is rigorous enough that, you're predicting a specific result. You've also done your due diligence, so you know roughly how long your experiment's going to take and how long it's going to take before you see the effect that you desire, and knowing when to switch on or switch off experiments if you need to. There are a lot of moving parts.
Joe, you're responsible for the Experimentation Elite Day and the Experimentation Elite Awards. Could you tell me about them and what prompted you to organise such events?
Well, particularly in the awards, I'd worked previously at publishing companies, and we run award ceremonies for various magazine brands. So I got some experience within that space, and also attended in the past stuff like the European Search Awards and various other kind of industry events. And I thought it's sort of crazy that if you like, the one of the disciplines that is the most measurable, if you like, and also with case studies where people are making claims of great work, that there isn't a forum out there to reward great work. So I originally started working on the awards about 2018, and I hooked up with Jackie and the team from the Digital Elite Day a couple of years ago, and we recruited what we think is a pretty good expert panel. I mean, we've got people like Craig Sullivan, who's been around for a very long term, worked for brands like Belron amongst many others over the years, and his company's called Optimize or Die. We've got Georgi Georgiev, who's one of the world leaders on A/B testing statistics. We've got Tim Stewart, who's a highly respected speaker and optimizer. Dina Allen from Fresh Egg. So did the first awards in 2020, at the end of 2020, right at the heart of the pandemic. So on that occasion, it was unfortunately a remote event, but the feedback from it was fantastic. So now that we've opened up, we made the decision to do the awards again.
So the awards take place, I believe, on the 27th of April in London, and this is probably one of the first live events post-COVID. Who's this aimed at? Who are the people that you want to be there?
Well, this is really about focusing on the people who are embedded in the optimization industry, who really want to kind of know more at the sharp end, the more sophisticated, the more complicated end of the business from the experts. So the whole day is really geared around, the clue is in the word elite. The speakers that we have here, it's not tips and tricks and getting started. This is for an audience who are already running experiments. It's about squeezing the additional value for optimization about all areas, and that doesn't necessarily mean just landing page tests or moving things around the page. This is optimization within all areas of the business. It's kind of thinking about rather than necessarily just here's a test on an e-commerce website, we can make an extra 10%. It's like, here's a test on a B2B website, how can we save 40% on customer service costs by doing this? So, these are people that are not, kind of at the early stages, if you like, just ticking over with something to impress the boss. This is about people really upskilling themselves with some top knowledge transfer from some of the best people in the business.
So one of the things we mentioned earlier was educating young marketers or inexperienced marketers. And you've mentioned this is a digital elite day stroke elite awards. Do you think marketers starting out would benefit from being there, or do you think they might be put off that it's all far too complicated and deep diving?
Well, this is a relatively small event. It's not aimed at the mass market. There are other events out there, including very big SEO events, which are multi-stream. They're aimed at
Mhm.
people who have come straight into the industry and maybe have a limited amount of knowledge, maybe 1 to 2 years. This really is about kind of elite knowledge for people who really need to upskill. We're not going to be explaining the nuts and bolts of A/B testing or MBT at this event. We will be dealing with the topics that affect people who are managing more complex experimentation plans. But it's not just two groups: people who've just started and people in the at the top end. There's a huge group in the middle who are
Yeah.
you know who are progressing from. We're quite effective as optimizers to we want to be the next set of superstars. How do we go out and do that?
Yeah, I mean, looking at the speakers and the topics of the speakers are talking about, I think it's definitely an area where everybody can learn something.
Yeah.
Because while some of them seem, kind of very simplistic, optimize or die from Craig Sullivan that you mentioned before, some of the other things that are out there are just talking about things which are far more relevant to people who may not even have thought about that. So I think an education process that actually delivers may not be groundbreaking, but it's certainly kind of the nudge theory, nudging people to do more about experimentation as well along the way. I think it seems to be packed full of value with some pretty meaty discussion points and things like that. So you've got people out there from head of data analytics from Compare the Market. Even if it's just around in a coffee table that you're having a coffee, you'll learn things. And I think that's probably one of the greatest things about these kind of events. It's getting people together with a common outcome, if you like.
Yeah, these are mainly people that are involved day to day with programs at a senior level. So it's these are people who they've got enough experience to know where a test program is likely to unravel, and they know that early on. So if either as going in as a consultant or working within the business, they'd stop you. And this is what I think part of my job is as a consultant is when I go and see a client, as I stop them, stepping into those bear traps that everybody makes because over the 12 years I've been doing it, pretty much every cock up that you can make within the industry, I will have done. And now you can see them coming a mile off. The level of people that you've got on this talk that's what they bring. They help you avoid making some of those more obvious mistakes.
Now, the cost of attending the conference is £195, which seems relatively inexpensive, but I know that some people inside organisations have to justify the fact that they're going and spending a day off from their business and going to be educated a little bit more. So it's not the £195 that matters, it's the lack of work. How do you think those people could justify being at this event to their bosses?
It's a really good question that because obviously everybody's under pressure, and if anything, one of the things that the pandemic has brought is more people are working at home, working longer hours. So, I guess you'd say you could make the time out, but I think the most important thing is it's really that again going back to that point about bear traps or mistakes that people make. What's the value of understanding what not to do and how to do things in the right way and how to avoid making a big mess. The value's got to be much more than a single day off work.
Will this become an annual event?
So, as far as I understand, we're intending to do another one in London in December. So, actually, Experimentation Elite Day will be a biannual event. In terms of the awards, I think that this, is now getting a little bit of currency. We've got entrants from all over Europe, including from some really, really big brands, and also some of the better known experimentation agencies. So, I'm hoping that the awards is going to become a regular fixture. In terms of the events, then yes, I mean certainly we're going to be doing a couple. The plan is to do a couple a year.
Joe, just before we disappear, if you could remind our listeners of the place and how to get registered, and the date and time, that would be very useful.
Yeah, so it's at the events at Cetra Venue, St Paul's, 200 Aldersgate Street in London, and the awards is the same day in the evening, and that is at Balls Brothers in Monument.
And that's on the 27th?
All on the 27th of April, yeah, so it's a long day.
And if I'm right, people need to register their interest and buy tickets at experimentationelite.com.
Yeah, experimentationelite.com. Click on there. You can buy the tickets online.
Joe, thank you very much. It's been an interesting conversation. Hopefully the awards will go as anticipated. I know we were up for one of the awards, hopefully. Let's see how we get on. So, Joe, thank you very much for your time, and I'll be listening in, if not physically there at the event on the day.
Great. Thanks, John.